Today we're going to compare the Oppo Find X3 Pro versus the OnePlus 9 Pro. On the OnePlus UI, I really like how easy it is to use. It got all the basic modes. I can just swipe up and get to any mode quickly. I don't have to swipe 10 times left and right to get to a certain mode. One thing that sticks out to me is the tilt shift mode, which is something different and not a lot of phones offer, but it's really situational. I don't think many people would use it really often, so that's one thing to know. The Oppo Find X3 Pro does offer a lot more different modes. It got Pro Video mode technically. It has dual video mode, so it's nice to see yourself and what's in front of you. And also it has microscope mode, which again, still situational. I don't think a lot of people would just naturally use this. So it's all really planned out if you do want to use microscope mode, but it's a nice thing to have. Video on the Oppo Find X3 Pro, it can shoot up to 4K 60 and it's slowed down to 24 as you can see right here. The colors are really natural and neutral, so it has a good realistic look. I wouldn't use the telephoto option because it looks digitized and of course it's not as sharp as the main lens, so I wouldn't really touch it too often. Stay using the main lens or the ultra wide angle lens as much as possible. And if you shoot yourself vlog style with the back camera, you can see a bit of that nice bokeh, so it's a good little separation there. On the OnePlus 9 Pro, you do get 4K 120, which is my favorite feature in this phone. So I can slow it down to 20% and I can get really smooth footage. One thing I noticed is that the white balance is pretty aggressive. On the floor, it was a bit more on the cooler side. Once I tilted up, it was really warm, like it just drastically changed like an instant. In 4K 120, it's not stabilized. Even though I'm on a gimbal and it's fairly smooth, you can still see those slight jitters. Just post stabilized and it should be almost all gone. Just like the Find X3 Pro, I wouldn't use a telephoto lens, so stick with the main lens or the ultra wide angle lens. Comparing them side by side in 4K 30, the biggest difference here is the white balance. On the OnePlus, it's warmer, on the Oppo, it's cooler. So it's self-preference to which one you like better. For stabilization, I would say the Oppo it's slightly better. It's just a tiny bit smoother, but it's really hard to tell unless you're looking for it. On the ultra wide angle lens, again here the white balancing is a bit different. On the Oppo, it's slightly leaning towards the magenta side, but you can still see the nice blue from the sky. For the shadows, you can see more details on the OnePlus, but once you switch to the main lens, which you can do while recording, the shadows are more crushed. If you want something more consistent, I would lean towards the Oppo. For low light, I'm going to give it to the Find X3 Pro. For one, it has less micro jitters while I'm walking, and two, it got more realistic colors. Yes, on the OnePlus, it is brighter, but it kind of gives off that bleached look, and I don't really like that. I do prefer the more contrastier and more poppy look on the Find X3 Pro. Now comparing photos, we're going to start off with portrait mode. As you can tell from the first picture, the Oppo didn't really capture me unless I'm a bit closer. The colors on the OnePlus feels really stern and cold, whereas on the Oppo, it's very warm and pleasant. The background blur on the Find X3 Pro is also more dreamy and softer, so I do prefer that look. But the HDR is not as good. The colors are great, but I'm gonna give the HDR to the OnePlus on both front and back cameras. Just in portrait mode. I would say the biggest con on the Oppo is the highlight roll off on the skin. It looks really bad, like it's completely burned in and destroyed. The biggest con for the OnePlus 9 Pro is that the cutouts are not completely accurate or consistent. Looking at the background, you can tell that it's not completely out of focus. So it leaves blobby areas like that, which is not good. In darker areas, the portrait mode on the OnePlus is very cold and stern again, which is something I don't prefer. I do like the colors, the warmer colors on the Oppo. Now taking normal pictures on the front camera, both are pretty good with the HDR. The colors here are different again, warmer tones on the Oppo which I prefer versus the cooler tones on the OnePlus. The field of view is also a bit wider on the Oppo. I do look farther away and also the background as well. For the ultra wide angle lens, both are really great. Again, the colors or white balancing is different. So on the Find X3 Pro is leaning towards the magenta warmer side, and I would say is a bit more contrastier as well. For HDR, I'm gonna give it to the Find X3 Pro. I can clearly see more in the shadows. and the overall image is just better exposed. On the main camera, I would say the Find X3 Pro is a bit more vibrant in the colors and more contrast there, so the overall image does pop a bit more. And without using portrait mode, there's also more background blur on the Find X3 Pro as well. For HDR, I'm gonna give it to the Oppo here. I think it just handles it better than the OnePlus. They are telephoto lenses on these phones, and on the OnePlus 9 Pro, you can go straight to 3.3x. On a Find X3 Pro, you can go straight to 2x, or there's another button you can press to 5x. I think both look really good here, it's just depending on what colors you'd like. I do prefer the warmer and more satisfying colors on Oppo. For low light throw all the lenses, I'm gonna give it to the OnePlus just because it's just more consistent. The colors are also a bit more realistic as well. If you take a look at the color of the sky on the Find X3 Pro, it's really cyan, which is not really realistic. And the shadows are also a bit harsher. One thing I can see Oppo does well is how clean it looks. Looking at the sky, you can tell that there's a lot more noise on the OnePlus. So I don't really prefer the low light colors, but I do like how clean it is. And that is my comparison between the OnePlus 9 Pro versus the Oppo Find X3 Pro. Let me know what you guys think and which one you like better. Also, don't forget to leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.